Hey, this is Ryan Crotman, More Than Velocity. Again, I'm hosting this alone. And I said the last segment that we were going to do was it. And then we got off of that segment and we kind of hung around for, 20 minutes or so. And we were chatting and, Mike brought up this situation. He's working with an athlete with an avulsion fracture and they happen. They're very rare. And, typically I'm going to kind of give a little bit of background story about how these things happen. But in the developmental years of athletes, especially during growth spurts, the soft tissue is stronger than the growth plates of bones. Okay. And when it comes to your elbow, in normal people, it doesn't become a fully fused bone. This inner bump on the elbow, we call it the medial epicondyle, it doesn't actually attach to the landmark bone, which is a humerus, until age 17. That's the last I read. Now, in throwing athletes, nobody's ever looked at this as far as what happens over the developmental period of this particular part of the bone. And it's probably prolonged because of all that repeated stress. And what can happen in athletes is that this growth plate between the bones, the medial epicondyle and the native bone, it keeps getting wider and wider and wider. That causes, that's really a symptom of little leaguer's elbow. It's more of a bone problem. It can be accompanied with some kind of medial epicondylitis, like these things happen, but there's growth plate inflammation. We call that the apophysitis. So the apophyses is what we talk about, the growth plate. Widening that means that it's inflamed. But when the athlete's in a developmental stage of their life, their soft tissue is stronger. So the common flexor pronator mass tendon is stronger. Ligament itself can be stronger than that area of the bone. And the avulsion fracture is where that piece of the bone, the medial epicondyle, rips off. It comes right off the bone. So you have a fracture that's caused by an overload of, a tensile force from your soft tissue. I almost had that as a kid. That's kind of what put me on the path of managing injuries. I'm more wound up over keeping athletes healthy than getting them to throw faster. And probably if you're listening to these, you're going to know that. And that's because I've come from this world of, I couldn't pitch again. I couldn't understand. I threw 71 miles an hour at the age of 11. I was 11 years old. Hardest throwing pitcher probably in my area. And parents didn't want me to pitch, but teams wanted to win. And I pitched almost every game at that age. So after one game, my arm was red hot, swollen, very painful, and locked. So there's so much inflammation that I couldn't move it. So my mom said, hey, we got to go to a pediatric orthopedic surgeon. They did imaging and the doctor comes in and he says, listen, I got bad news. And my mom was worried I was going to have surgery. The doctor said, your growth plate, severely inflamed, could rip off, could have an avulsion fracture. You need to go physical therapy. And I'm telling you, you should never pitch again. And I wanted to be a pitcher. I mean, I loved it because I was in control of the game. I like that fact that, it's me versus the game. It's my tempo. It's my world. And, to be told I could never pitch again, I basically didn't want anything like that happening to anybody else. So it's always inspired me to look at health and wellness. I mean, one of the things when I entered my PhD program, I entered an exercise physiology side. I was an exercise physiology student first, and I wanted to look at heavy doses of vitamin C injections in rats that we infected with snake venom to kill muscle cells, soft tissue. Because I believed, I was like, hey, maybe an injection of vitamin C in the ligament is going to preserve collagen or else help it reintegrate. And after a while, I was just like, man, I'm killing rats left, right, and center. And it wasn't the world I wanted to be in. And the biomechanics side of me said, I want to explore a different professor, a different research line, and got into the pitching movement. But we got into this conversation. I know it's the longest side. I'm giving you background information. I talked to Mike, and he's telling me about this case with a player that he's with right now that's got an avulsion fracture. All right. That's crazy because, that seems like a whole different animal of what's gone on with that bone. I don't even know how they fix that part of the body to keep it integrated again and that it becomes, a mature bone. So I'm going to shut up for a little bit until Mike says something that's going to trigger me. And I'm going to let Mike take over and talk about this avulsion fracture case.
Okay. This guy is a sophomore in college. And it actually, the fracture happened last June. And at the time, he was literally throwing 95 miles an hour. And he felt a pop, pitching coach came out and I said, then basically said, flip a couple more, and so the catcher got down, he tried flipping a couple more and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. So they basically shut him down. He literally stopped for a couple of weeks. Pain went away, started throwing again and kicked right back up. So, so being a college athlete, if he goes to their doctors, then it pretty much gets paid for. I mean, I know he had to do some kind of deductible, but I mean, the college pretty much picked it up. So he had to go to their physician. It was determined that he had an avulsion fracture, what they call a proximal avulsion fracture. And the ligament was in great shape. But so what they did at that same time is they figured, hey, since we're in there, we're gonna go ahead and do what they call an ulnar nerve transposition, where they actually move the ulnar nerve out of that socket, and they also did a collagen sleeve around the UCL. And
holy heck!
Oh yeah,
total refurbishing. Taking your car in as a Pinto, coming out as a Ferrari. Yeah,
that's right. I think like 6 weeks out of that, obviously he had to go to their PTs.
How did they how did they reattach the bone? Like
he told me they stapled it, but he wasn't 100% sure. And since I wasn't involved, and I asked him, hey, can you get
I figured screws. I was like, man, this guy's got to go screws to get that thing in there. But they
could. I mean, they may not even have told him. He wasn't quite sure. And I asked for the if he could get the docs, and he said he would, but I've never seen him.
Yeah. Okay.
So he got to his PT, and so they, through that orthopedic surgeon and the PT, he started his return to throwing. And every time, I mean, he wouldn't get past 10 feet and kept getting pain. And so he went back to the doctor like 3 different times, and they kept saying, oh, you're fine. They do x-rays and all that. And he said, you're fine. And they finally told him, hey, just take some ibuprofen and keep going. Yeah, and this was at the beginning of October when he started telling me this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, please don't do ibuprofen, because all that does is mask if there's anything going on. I mean, you may blow it before you even know there's an issue there.
Yep.
So he kept going back to them. They did x-rays again, and they finally said, you're good. You just continue your return to throwing. And so he came to me and said, hey, we're wanting to do this, and I can't get past 10 feet. So the first thing I did was put a training sock on him.
Mm-hmm.
And he literally threw without any pain. I mean, none whatsoever. It just immediately went away. And so I said, okay, so for the next 3 weeks, I'm gonna put you on the arm care program so I can start seeing your strength and all that, and do that training, and then we're gonna do sock throws for 3 straight weeks. And we literally did that every single day. We did sock throws. We'd start out at 8 throws, then we'd go up to 16 throws. And then I'd do like you do an inning. We do two sets of 8, sit for 5-10 minutes, do another 2 sets of 8, and we got up to literally 4 sets, no pain whatsoever.
Amazing.
So, yep. And then so at the end of that 3 weeks, we basically put a ball in his hand, and he literally threw without pain, and hasn't had pain since.
I mean, I'm just going to cut you off because I'm trying to feel what that guy felt internally in that moment. So there's when I look on social media, sometimes Instagram, I don't spend a lot of time on there, but there's always, my wife will play really uplifting things. So there's one that almost makes me cry. It's a kid that can't hear anything, never heard their parents, never heard a sound. And they put something in the child's ear, and the parent says something to the child, calls the child by name, and the kid's eyes light up. The kid is like, for the first time he hears, and it hits me so hard. I'm like, God, that's so amazing. And for me, kind of what you do, that feeling of being an athlete for the first time in so long, all you want is your arm not to hurt, right? MLB, I've worked with players, okay, and believe me, I don't condone any of this, but the two most commonly used things in MLB for pain is marijuana, okay, and these NSAIDs, these drugs, and guys have it heavily in their system. And what you're saying is like, hey, the root problem is the pain. They don't know what to do about it, And I just kind of think about this athlete, and I know so many athletes with arm pain, tons, and they just say, this is just the way it is. They get their arm going, arm feels good in the game, and then 2 days later, it's like, I want to cut it off, And I'm just trying to think of this athlete in that moment of when they are not feeling pain and they're searching for it. They're kind of wondering, like, when's it going to happen? I see guys that when they get out of pain, they're like moving it around. They just want to make sure their arm's okay. They haven't felt this before. So before you get deeper in the story, I just want to know, like, what was the reaction of this kid? Like, he talks, he's like,
it was almost like the athlete from last night. His eyes just bugged out, and he's like, no way.
Yeah, amazing.
Just no way. And then at that point in time, he pretty much locked in to say, hey, I'm coming back. He goes, do you mind if you take over the rest of my rehab?
Golly, man. I mean, I got to cut you off again because, like, it gives me chills because their life changes, having pain. So I got knee pain. All right. I used a device that is a vibrational device, training device, and made by a company called Galileo, German device. And it's a vibrating squat platform. And it's different than a power plate. The power plate is a vertical vibration, right? This power plate is a lateral vibration. It's shear. It's not axial. Axial vibration over time, it's like a jackhammer, right? It can cause vibrational injury if you overdo it. But this is really safe. Kids are doing this. So I've had missing cartilage on the outside part of my knee for the better part of, and pain with it for the better part of 16, 17 years. Okay. Like baseball injuries. Like you think I hit all the time. Obviously I couldn't pitch. I'm a little obsessive compulsive about baseball, if you haven't noticed, and I would hit all the time, but that extension and grinding in the rotation of my lead leg, it really wore down the bone. And I remember when I was doing my PhD, University of Buffalo, I went in to see the orthopedics. It was the first time I ever been in an MRI. I hated it. And they said, dude, think of your knee as two sides of being an orange, and you've peeled away a little chunk on both sides. And now you got this underlying almost bone material touching, and it's giving you pain. It's giving you a lot of pain signals. So my entire life from then on, I had not been able to squat past 90 degrees when I train. 90 degrees is it. I go beyond that, I'm going to go to the floor. I'm in such pain. So a buddy of mine, Paul Cater, is world specialist, I think, in isoinertial training and vibrational training, especially for throwing athletes. He's amazing too. I got to have him on the podcast, but he brings this thing. He's now with the Angels. He's a AAA strength coach at the Angels. He brings in this platform, and I get on it. And he says, you can do this bilaterally. I tried to do a few squats. I'm like, man, this is cool. Like, I'm able to get lower than 90. It's wild. I'm like, but I'm probably still compensating somehow. I'm going to do single leg. So I do a single leg lunge. I do eccentrics as low as I can go. I think I had the frequency of 20 contractions per second. My muscles were just firing as I'm doing this. Okay. It gets to a point where you crank up the hertz and your brain shuts off. You can't cognitively control it. It's all spinal cord driven contraction. You're almost in a state where you can't move it very easily. But I do this and I go down and I'm like, man, I'm getting below 90 and my body has no strength. So I'm just falling, and I get off the plate and he goes back on the plate. I was like, I'm going to test this. And I was kind of gingerly doing it, a pistol squat, just a single leg squat on this bad leg. And I literally go my ass to almost my calf, way beyond 90 and back up pain-free. Right. And that was kind of an aha moment where I was like, holy, I'm out of pain. I've woken up muscles that I hadn't been using for so long, shut down, not able, working in a range. And this is what happens when we're injured, right? We work in ranges that it minimizes our range, and it minimized the variability in my loading. So I'm getting constant stress, same intensity, same way, years and years and years and years, in that moment where I'm like, holy shit, I cannot believe I'm out of pain. It was an incredible feeling, amazing. And I think of that in myself and what people are doing with you. You probably have, like this guy, years and years of pain. So like, I'm just kind of the story of how you deal with pain is amazing, but that's an aside. Go ahead, back to the story.
Okay. So, we start the thing, I get the arm care wrapped around, doing some of those things. And since, we had him pain free, we literally went through the entire process of totally reprogramming the lower body. When he threw the previous winter with me, I mean, he was throwing 94, 95, but it was 110% effort. I mean, I would cringe watching, just thinking, oh my gosh, any day now, I'm going to be sitting here when he blows his arm out. Lucky it didn't happen. But so I got him to totally, because we talked about that, and he agreed that but he was throwing 95, so he wasn't going to stop, because he was playing college, and he wanted to, get to a 4-year college and get signed, and until he blew up. So I was able to convince him to totally reprogram everything. And as we're doing this, we start running into little things like he would get super sore, and I couldn't pinpoint it, why was his arm getting so sore? So, it was kind of wild, because it hit me after I went through your certification, and if you remember, I was texting you at probably 4 a.m.
Oh yeah, man. I was like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah, that's usually what happens.
I was in bed. I'm like, whoa, this guy's Batman.
Yep. Is I actually took Kramer red hot analgesic, and we would literally, rub and he probably went too far the first time, because he'd rub that on his elbow and put a sleeve on, and we found that now he wasn't having pain. So it clicked on me after that certification, was what that analgesic is doing is now is pumping blood into that elbow, and so it wasn't stiffening up on it, and so we were constantly doing little stuff like that. And then we got into, now he actually started going with the school again, and and hitting 95. I mean, he actually hit I think he actually touched 96.3 at one point, but he was sitting 94, 95. Is after his session, he literally couldn't touch the baseball for days. I mean, because it was so sore and so stiff, and and so and I diagnosed it as medial epicondylitis, and that's normal with somebody that has Tommy John or that kind of
coming back. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Dang, so and here you talked about getting rid of pain, and I don't know if you've ever heard of an interferential EMS.
Nope.
Oh my gosh. The first time I did it with him, I just did it. And what it is it's 2 different sine strengths. And what you do is you create a crossing pattern, and they collide, and it literally goes deep into the bone. Most EMSers are surface nerves and that kind of stuff. So it gets rid of it, kind of like taking NSAIDs. It gets rid of the pain for half hour, and then it's right back.
Yeah.
So the first time I did it just on the epicondyle, and that he's like, holy cow! I mean, he could get 100% extension, the whole bit. So from that point on, we started doing the entire elbow. Because I was worried at first as messing with the nerve, because that baby gets in there in your pinky finger curls, and when it hits,
contraction,
Yep.
Yeah.
But so since then, we've totally gotten rid of the epicondylitis, and now he's able to literally do stuff day after throw. So we basically even created a what we call a post-game recovery, whereas you take that training sock and the day after you throw, and you literally do a bunch of different drills at 30% effort. So what it's really doing is just pumping all that blood back into the whole kinetic chain.
It's amazing, man.
And so he's back. The biggest thing with him is he's still in that mental state, that any throw is going to be his last throw. So I mean, it's been tough. He'll throw. I mean, he throws an inning, with this college, and he dominates, but he won't go past an inning. Supposedly this week, I think he's going to try to be the closer and go a couple innings.
I mean, it's just, this is another thing I got to get back to. It's like, you're very unique, and I can't stop saying it. I keep looking into people. It's like, and it's the way I think of the world too in sport performance. Like, you hire a biomechanist, generally they just focus on movement, right? You hire a strength coach, they focus on strength. You hire a sports psychologist, they focus on the cognitive element. You hire a motor learning specialist, and they worry about drill development and tool selection and constraint-led training and those kinds of things, right? And the thing I like about you is you're taking all of this and you're taking something that's very external. An injury, it's externally driven in some ways. It's internally supported by, the mechanics of your muscles, overlying ligaments and tendons and tissue. And then you're taking it to this level that is physiologic and biochemical, as far as that happening. And it's just, for me, and Randy Sullivan says this too. It's like, he wrote a book, I think it starts with pain. This is why I got to get you guys aligned, but it's a very similar concept. It's like getting these athletes out of pain is so essential to progress them forward, and the way you're doing it is amazing, because it makes sense. Like, athletes need to lessen the sensation of pain. They need to improve blood flow to an area, that could be having a capillary kind of shutdown. A lot of times when we have injuries to muscles, tendons, ligaments, we've done something to, the circulation of that area, coupled with the fact that we're putting in prosthetic stuff and all sorts of things, cadaver stuff. Man, that's amazing. So with this particular athlete, like, now what's his timeline? When do you think he's going to be ready with something like this? Because the avulsion fracture, to me,
he's actually thrown an inning in the game. I mean, he's
okay.
He's live. He
so
just
live.
He just won't push himself past an inning. But he's, he now, we got the medial part of the epigonal fixed, and he's not having any. And the other thing we did, which, I was starting to talk to in sidetracked, was going through your certification process. I mean, I knew that it worked. I just never really had the technical why. But as soon as you talked about icing and not to do it, I mean, it just triggered, and I literally stopped the certification process. I texted you, hey, where can I get this, this, journal entry you're talking about? And in the meantime, I literally convinced him quit icing.
Yeah.
But his trainer and pitching coach would pound on him. No, you got to go ice. And he goes, no, I'm not icing anymore. Which, now he's totally pain free. So now he's talking about this weekend that he's gonna go up 2 or 3 innings.
Yeah, I could go off on a rant on icing, and because I don't want this to be too long. I need people to listen to this. All of what you're saying is important lessons learned. But people, I got a couple blogs and some communications out there on icing and the dangers of icing. And I'm just going to say the 3 factors of healing is, you got fluid buildup. That's generally what causes pressure on the sensory, nerves. So you got to get fluid out, right? You got to get fresh blood in, and you need to be able to pump that stuff out, like the lacteals, which is another circulatory system that gets, immune fluid from our immune system out of an area once it gets injured, because a lot of our cells, they build more fluid. The only way it can happen is muscle movement, So you're talking about this neuromuscular electrical stimulation, getting that, evacuating the fluid, right? But now you're talking about the ice. And the ice, it doesn't get blood in or out. And what can happen, it's shutting down all these processes. And and when you thaw out, sometimes you get secondary swelling. It becomes worse. So, I mean, man, it's amazing. You're speaking to the choir, and you're living it, you know, with these players. So it's cool that you're changing their minds.
Yeah, and what's even crazy now is you know, he does the arm care work at you know, is the college and all the other stuff. And now he's literally got 4 guys on the pitching staff following him. And so I've actually added them to the, you know, to the app, you know, and they use his device.
That's amazing. You got to get us in touch with those kids, because they should have their own.
One of those, what I look at is almost the bottom up analogy is, you know, it's so hard to crack what the coach is, you know, because they've been doing the same thing forever, and that's how they did it, and that's how their coach made them do it. They're reluctant to do anything, and what's happening is all these, you know, pitchers on this staff have seen him coming back throwing 96, throwing harder than he threw before, and they're like, and then they see him using all these devices, and they're like, well, what are you doing? And so he explains it to them, and they're like, can I do it? And so he literally is, you know, he's almost training his own little staff on the team.
Amazing, man. Well, I'm so glad, you know, our listeners got this bonus episode. I mean, we're trying to keep these things short. I know I speak a lot because I get excited by what Mike's saying. It resonates a lot with me. We're going to have to do more of this stuff with Mike, because these case studies are so helpful for people, you know, who are trying to help athletes after physical therapy. You know, we got to help our physical therapists. You know, our certified arm care specialist course, it's nationally accredited for certain physical therapy boards across the country. And it's accredited with the National Strength and Conditioning Association. We're working on the athletic training side. You know, we're giving this to coaches, to pitching coaches, to people who I think are the #1 protectors of health. But we got to tool up the other people who need to know this stuff that aren't in the realm of throwing, you know, and how to prepare the athletes. And we got to help the medical field understand that, you know, the typical return to throw program is one thing, but here are some other elements to make it better. You know, can't say it enough. We got to get, you know, people in touch with you who are in this world. I mean, baseball injuries are rampant. They're everywhere. Arm injuries are the thing. Cost teams money, cost players money. Doesn't matter. It takes the enjoyment out of parents. You know, Mike, I don't want to blow him up that he doesn't have time to coach, but you guys got to reach out to them. Anybody who's dealing with injured athletes, healthy athletes, prevention. He's a great resource. And, you know, thanks, Mike. I really appreciate it again. I'm glad we did this bonus episode, brother.
You're welcome.
All right. Until next time, for More Than Velocity. Thanks.